By 2016, I had made my peace. That's what I told myself. I was 68, 9 years since my husband passed, and quietly, without drama, I decided I was done. Not bitter, not sad, just done. I liked my life, my home, my routines, my books, my morning coffee brewed exactly how I liked it. No one telling me it was too strong. I had my garden, my daughter Emma calling every Sunday, my retirement savings organized the way I wanted. My life was calm, orderly, entirely mine. And I'd come to a conclusion about men my age. Many were looking for someone to care for them, or to fill their world, and I wasn't hiring for either. Let me explain why I believe that. I wasn't bitter. I was a widow who had deeply loved her husband. Loving Michael for 33 years had taught me a lot about marriage, not just the good parts, but the quiet, everyday reality. Michael was a good man, and I need you to know that because it's true. He made me laugh every single day. He remembered birthdays, anniversaries, the day we met. He was an incredible father. Everyone loved him, and I did too. But here's a detail you have to hear. Michael could not boil an egg. Literally. One time I was sick with a high fever, body aching, and he decided to cook for the kids. Simple enough. He tried to boil eggs, burned the pot completely, smoke everywhere, alarm blaring. He came to my room sheepishly. Maybe we should order pizza. And there I was, fever and all, getting out of bed to finish dinner. He let me do it. Not because he was bad, but because that had become our rhythm. I had spent decades running the household. It was my domain. He never had to manage it. And when he died quickly of cancer, I stood in my kitchen after the last guest left. 60 people had been fed, chairs folded, dishes washed. Not one person thought to manage me. I was the manager, even in grief. Years later, I tried dating again. A first guy I can barely remember. Then a retired accountant named Victor. On the third date, he called me asking if I could book his doctor's appointment. Said I probably knew the phone system better than he did. I hung up, didn't call back, and stopped dating altogether. Not angry, just tired. Tired of being competent in a world where competent meant she handles it all. I closed that door, and I never planned to open it again. So when Obadiah Farrington invited me to dinner at his house 2 months after meeting at a local history lecture, I said yes. The way we accept something often confirms what we already believe. I drove over thinking, let's see, takeout containers, a kitchen tidied 20 minutes ago, maybe a candle to show effort. I was ready to be right, almost hoping to be right, because being right meant I could keep that door closed and stop wondering. I walked into Obadiah's house, and it was clean. Not clean for guests, not clean for show, lived-in clean. Books on shelves where they belonged. Floors swept because floors get swept. Counters wiped down, not for me, but because that's how he lived. A home cared for every single day, not just when someone was visiting. I stood in the doorway and thought, someone lives here, really lives here. And then I smelled the food. Obadiah was at the stove, making jollof rice from scratch. The aroma of tomato, Scotch bonnet, and bay leaf filled the kitchen. He stirred the pot with the ease of someone who has done it 1,000 times, not following a recipe, not nervous, not performing, just cooking the way someone cooks when they're comfortable. He looked over his shoulder and smiled. I learned this recipe after Cynthia passed. Took me about 2 years to get it right. Cynthia, his wife, died in 2010. He had spent 2 years learning her recipe, not because he had to, but because he loved her. That's how he carried that love forward. The table was set. Cloth napkins, water glasses already filled. He hadn't asked me to bring anything, to help with anything. All he asked was that I show up. I spent 32 years as a branch manager at a credit union. I read details for a living. What do the numbers tell you that the presentation doesn't? That's how I evaluate everything: people, situations, risk. And sitting at Obadiah Farrington's dinner table, every single detail told the same story. This man does not need me to function. His life is already working. The food was good. Not restaurant good, real good. The kind of good that comes from making something so many times your hands remember the recipe. We talked for 2 hours. He asked questions, then listened. Really listened. Not listening while waiting for his turn to speak. He remembered things I'd mentioned weeks before at the lecture series. He was curious about my work, wanted to know about my daughter. And then dinner was over and I stood to clear the dishes. Automatic. I didn't even think about it. I stood up the way I had thousands of times before, reaching for the plates before the last fork had even touched the table. Muscle memory. 33 years with Michael. 32 years running a bank branch. A lifetime being the woman who handles everything. Obadiah looked at me and said, "Sit down, Maggie. I've got this." 5 words. I sat, and I watched him, 70 years old, retired history teacher, widowed 6 years, carry the plates to the sink, turn on the hot water, and wash every single dish by hand. No rush, no show, not looking at me for approval, just washing the dishes because the dishes needed washing. And he was a grown man who washed his own dishes. Sitting at that kitchen table, something cracked open in my chest. Not pain, but the opposite. My eyes stung, and I pressed my fingers to them quickly, because I am not a woman who cries at the kitchen table. But I was 68, and never in my life had I sat at a man's table while he cleaned up after a meal he'd cooked for me. Later, I found the word relief. Like I had been carrying something heavy for so long, I'd forgotten I was carrying it. And someone simply said, "Put that down. You don't have to hold it here." I didn't need another husband. I'd had one. What I needed, what I didn't know I needed, was proof that a man could walk into a room and not expect me to run it. And here's what you need to understand about Obadiah. He wasn't born this way. When Cynthia was alive, she did most of the cooking, most of the cleaning, most of the household management. He told me this honestly. When Cynthia died, I couldn't make toast without burning it. I didn't know where we kept spare sheets. I didn't know how to sort laundry. But he didn't go looking for a replacement. He went looking for a cookbook, a mop, a system. 6 years learning to care for himself. 6 years of practice. That's what I was sitting across from that night. Not a performance, a practice. And that distinction matters. A man who needs you will drain you slowly, cheerfully, without malice. But he will drain you. He hands you his life to manage and calls it love. A man who wants you, whose house is already clean, whose meals are already cooked, whose pills are in the right bottle and appointments on his calendar, that man chooses to be with you. He isn't giving you a job. He's offering you a chair. Last year, 2023, the whole family came to dinner. Obadiah cooked collard greens, cornbread, baked chicken. When everyone finished, he was in the kitchen putting away leftovers, washing pots, wiping counters without being asked, without thanks. Just doing it the way he lives. Teddy pulled me aside in the hallway. "Mom," she said, "this is what it's supposed to look like. Dad never did that." I didn't argue. I just said, "I know, baby, I know." Obi and I have been together 9 years now. We're not married, don't need to be. We keep separate homes by choice. We cook for each other. We take turns. Nobody manages the other person's life. What we have are 2 whole people choosing each other every day. That's not a fairy tale. That's just what happens when both people show up complete. Now, if you're dating, if you're sitting across from a man and wondering whether he's different, here's what I want you to do. Go to his house. Not for romance, for information. Look at his kitchen. Look at his bathroom. See if he can make a meal for himself that didn't come from a microwave. Ask him who does his laundry. Ask him who schedules his doctor's appointments. These are not small questions. These are the questions. A man who can take care of himself is a man who is choosing to be with you. A man who can't is a man who is hiring you. I'm 77 years old. I'm sitting at a table I didn't set, drinking coffee I didn't make, in a house I didn't have to clean. And the man who made this coffee is in the other room, reading a book he picked out himself. That's not magic. That's just what a good man looks like. And you deserve one. Share this with a woman who has forgotten she deserves a seat at someone else's table. And if you're a man hearing this, buy a cookbook. Start today. It's never too late.